Hi, I live in Corona, California, and our community was very shaken last Sunday and in the days that followed because Sunday night, three young boys, teenage boys, were killed in a terrible automobile accident. Um, and that happened just a few blocks from my home. There were six boys in a car. You might have heard of this on the news. Six boys in a car, and they were intentionally run into, and then they hit a tree. And three of the boys died. There were three 16-year-olds from three different schools around here. One of the schools is my daughter's school, and so um, the community has been shaken at that high school. And I'm a mother of a teenager and then another kid that's 20. So it felt a little too vulnerable, a little too close to home, and just was very sad. And as a person in the church, as a pastor, I wanted to speak to some of those issues that come up. The grieving and all of that is an understandable byproduct. But even before that, um, there are often things that stress us out in this life. And sometimes things that are stressful are things that we would say are legitimate, very difficult or toxic relationships or work or health issues. But a lot of things that stress us out, when we really think about it, there are things that aren't that big of a deal, things that are pretty petty, things that 5 years from now won't even make a difference. I have a new dog right now. He's a great dog. I already have a she dog, and now I have a he dog, and the one that's a he is a puppy. And so, it's exhausting to have a puppy. They go through a lot, and so we've been at the vet and had to do things and clean up after the dog's messes and things like that. Well, in 5 years, that's not going to matter. It's that kind of stuff that is stressful that's just really not all that important. And it takes sometimes something like this huge tragedy to wake us up to that, to the things that matter and the things that really don't matter. And to have us ask those questions: how many of those things that don't matter do I let get to me? In my home, in my workplace, in my church, are there things that really don't matter all that much? Because what really matters is life, the life that we have. And the minute people seem to lose their lives young, we realize what's really important, and that is people, our loved ones. Martin Luther, who's a great teacher, we Lutheran Christians don't believe he's divine or anything. He's not to be worshipped, but he's a very good teacher. And he wrote a lot of things around 500 years ago. And he believed that we are citizens of two kingdoms simultaneously. And that's often misunderstood to mean the separation of church and state, that we belong to church and we belong to state or the political realm or the secular realm. And that's not what he meant. And I personally am a great proponent of the separation of church and state, but that's a very American concept, or a very Western, at least Western, but particularly American concept, that is a relatively new concept. If you look at it historically, that's not how most people have done things over the course of the millennia, where the sense of politics and the sense of worship in terms of church or temple or synagogue or mosque is somehow separated. And I like that separation. I like that's one thing I really value as an American, that separation, for lots and lots of reasons. That would be another video to talk about that. But that's not what Martin Luther meant. What he meant, and he was writing in Germany in the 1500s, so he probably wasn't as aware of the separation of church and state as you and I are. But he talked about how we are citizens of both this earth and citizens of heaven at the same time. So everything that we can see here, when we go to work, when we live with our families, when we go to worship, everything we can see here means that we're citizens of this earth. And then also simultaneously, we are currently and invisibly citizens of heaven, not just after we die. It's not just about an afterlife thing, but that we are citizens of heaven right now. We have been adopted into that, and that's done not by our work and not by our own acceptance of anything, not by our own decision, but by the grace of Jesus Christ. The work that was done on the cross, the work that we have been gifted. Simply grace. It's the gospel, which means good news. That's the good news. And so when we get stressed out about life stuff, we can ask ourselves, which kingdom am I talking about? And it's generally that we're talking about this kingdom, this place where we have a citizenship, earthly things. My dog whining, my daughter having a stressful day at school because of grades, things going on where church isn't perfect, or work isn't perfect, or family isn't perfect. We're talking about things of this kingdom. And those are things to be worked out, and those are things to be, challenges to be overcome, and God can help us and guide us through all of that. But it might help to remember that we are also citizens of heaven. We are citizens of a godly relationship right now that will just continue on after we die. Life is everlasting, and so that will continue, and there will be, on the other side of this veil of life, there will be no suffering. Those 3 boys are fine. It's their families that are now suffering and their loved ones, but there will be no suffering, when we die, what we call death. There really is no death. But on this side of things, on this side of the veil, as we still have a heartbeat and are still in our physical bodies, there is, of course, suffering and struggle. And so remember, when you're going through those things of stress, those things that might be relatively petty, really, like traffic on the freeway, or the plumber being late showing up at your house for an appointment, things like that, just remember that what's really important here is a sense of groundedness. And when you can know that you're a citizen of heaven, that God loves you and will never let you go, that what's really important will be held, which is love, and that love never fails, and that love is sustained even beyond the grave. When we can keep hold of that, then maybe those petty things we can let go a little bit more easily. I hope that helps when you're going through difficulties and stress. But of course, if you ever have something very serious that you'd like to talk about, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm the pastor over at Cross and Crown Lutheran Church in Rancho Cucamonga, or you can comment here on this video. Please subscribe, which is up above, and comment down below to this video, and go share some of this love that God has first given us. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.